Hey guys, Marvelous Joe at the top of the episode to remind you that if you enjoy this podcast, be sure to check us out on Patreon, where we have bonus content for you. Please stay tuned at the end of this episode for a special 30-second sneak peek of the bloopers episode we have made exclusively for our patrons. Then visit patreon.com/dynamicduel. Again, that's patreon.com/dynamicduel. On with the show! Hi, and welcome to the Dynamic Duel podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Marvelous Joe.
And I'm his twin brother, Johnny DC.
And in this episode, we're going to find out who would win in a fight between Ra's al Ghul and Red Skull.
No, I actually just learned the correct pronunciation, because the cartoon, of course, used to say Ra's al Ghul, right. And the movie Batman Begins said Ra's al Ghul, but it's Ross, like Ross and Rachel.
From Friends, right?
Yes.
Exactly. Now, Ra's al Ghul is one of Batman's greatest villains, and Red Skull is Captain America's greatest villain. So we figured this was a great matchup between the two. Ra's al Ghul means demon's head in Arabic, and the Red Skull has a face that looks like a demon.
Right.
And we figured that they're both comparable in terms of stats, so we thought this would be a good matchup. We'll find out exactly how good or bad later on this episode when we run simulations on these characters using their stats. Before we get into that, we're going to break down the comic book movie news from the past week. I know last week we were excited that we finally got some non-coronavirus related news, but this week it's all back to the Rona. We have a shit ton more release date changes to go over, including Venom's, Doctor Strange's, Thor Love and Thunder's, Spider-Man Far From Home sequel, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, The Batman, and Shazam.
And The Flash.
Holy crap.
All the movies.
Just all of them. Just fucking, I don't know, throw all the previous news bits that we've had about this out the window, because studios are changing things on a weekly basis.
As always, our segment times are in our episode description, so feel free to jump around to whatever portion of the episode you want to listen to.
We want to give a quick shout out to Friendly Neighborhood Comic Fan, BHM CVM, LX Bukago, and KD Boston for their reviews on iTunes of our show. We really appreciate it, guys.
The reviews were really heartfelt. They mean a lot to us.
If you're not able to review us, like say you're listening to us on Spotify or something like that, please at least share the show with friends and family members that would enjoy this podcast. But with that out of the way,
quick to the No Prize. So No Prize is an award that Marvel used to give out up until the 90s to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award that we post on social media that I personally draw for those who we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week.
Last week's question was, which past Marvel or DC film director besides Zack Snyder would you like to see come back to direct another superhero film, and which one? We got a whole lot of answers for this one. It was almost impossible to choose a winner. There are at least like 3 or 4 that I would have liked to have given the No Prize award to, and probably could have gotten it, but in the end, I just had to pick one of those, and it was extremely difficult. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, there were a lot of people who gave multiple answers. We only chose the one that we liked the most. Kind of had to just narrow it down. But our first honorable mention goes to Jacob Bell, who said that the Russo brothers, who directed a few Avengers films and Captain America the Winter Soldier, should direct Batman Under the Red Hood. And yeah, as hard-hitting as the Winter Soldier was, I think they could do a fantastic job adapting Batman Under the Red Hood.
Absolutely. That would be fantastic. JP Lunai gets honorable mention for his mention of Guillermo del Toro, who he said should direct Justice League Dark. Now, for a while, Guillermo was attached to direct that movie, and I guess negotiations fell through or the script didn't work or something like that, but he absolutely would have been perfect for that franchise.
Yeah, he did a phenomenal job directing Blade 2, and we reviewed that film. I think he would do a fantastic job with Justice League Dark as well.
Can't wait for that show to come out on HBO Max.
Ken Johnson also recommended Guillermo del Toro, but said he should direct Marvel's Zombies. And yeah, it makes sense. Guillermo del Toro has a huge horror background, so why not zombies?
Yeah, the way he treated the Reapers, the villains in Blade 2, they were very zombie-like in that film. I think he would do an amazing job with Marvel heroes that turn into zombies. Alex Yanez also gave the answer of Guillermo del Toro, saying that he should direct a Vision or Scarlet Witch film.
Yeah, Guillermo del Toro has like a romantic kind of background as well with like The Shape of Water, which won an Oscar, you know?
Yeah, he would bring a nice dark romantic vibe to that movie.
Joshua Smith said that Bryan Singer, the director of several X-Men films, should continue to direct X-Men for the MCU.
Yeah, I mean, the guy did direct some amazing X-Men films like X-Men 2 and X-Men Days of Future Past, but I think I would almost rather have someone more like Matthew Vaughn, who directed X-Men First Class, because I think his style is more in keeping with the current MCU's tone.
Yeah, I could see that. I agree.
Michael Haggerty, and I love this answer, he said that James Wan, who directed Aquaman, should direct a Constantine film.
Yeah, James Wan, of course, directed Aquaman, but before that, he's known for directing like the Conjuring films and a bunch of other horror films.
Yeah, Insidious.
Saw. He would do a fantastic job with the Hellblazer film.
Caleb Albers said that James Mangold, who directed Logan, should direct a Punisher movie. And oh my god, that's a great answer. The way that James Mangold approaches his superhero movies from such a grounded angle, Logan was just a masterpiece, and he could really bring Punisher the exact vibe that it needs to have. Especially, if they bring back John Bernthal in the role.
Jeremy Orr gets honorable mention for saying that Louis Leterrier, the director of The Incredible Hulk, should direct Red Hood and the Outlaws.
That would be amazing. Louis Leterrier, he directed the Transporter movies, and he did Unleashed, and The Incredible Hulk was a great action film. He is a fantastic action director and would bring so much exciting action to Red Hood and the Outlaws.
Yeah, and I think the most recent version of the Outlaws has Bizarro in it. And if he could do the Hulk, he could totally do Bizarro.
Right. John Horsley III said that Lexi Alexander, who directed Punisher Warzone, should return to direct Lobo. And Punisher Warzone is probably my favorite guilty pleasure Marvel movie. I know it's not the best made film, but I do enjoy watching it when I do watch it. And it's that kind of extremely violent, humorous vibe that I think is perfect for Lobo.
Yeah, absolutely. Miggy Madangian gave the answer of Chris McKay, who he wants to direct Nightwing. Chris McKay previously directed Lego Batman, and after that he was actually up for a Nightwing film that just has yet to materialize. And who knows by this point if it'll ever happen. I don't think it will. You never know.
Bo Bermudez gets honorable mention for his answer, and I love this one, of Stephen Norrington, saying that he should direct any number of Marvel movies, but singled out Wolverine as one of his options. And I think Stephen Norrington is an incredibly underrated auteur. He, of course, directed the first Blade movie, and he directed LXG, which we won't hold against him.
Yeah, he's kind of known for being like a jerk to work with, but his style is just so kinetic and so action-packed. I think he would be perfect for Wolverine.
Yeah, it's a shame that he got out of the game so early in his career, because I think he had a lot to offer the film industry. He is, of course, the one who really pioneered the modern superhero movie.
One of my favorite answers came from Adam Spees, who gave the answer of Ang Lee, who directed the first Hulk movie, saying that he should direct Iron Fist.
Yeah, and as much as the 2003 Hulk movie may have been hit or miss, Ang Lee's other work is just phenomenal. He directed Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Life of Pi. He's an amazing filmmaker. And I think to go back to the same martial arts style that was in Crouching Tiger would make for an incredible Iron Fist film. Joel Seagrave gets honorable mention for his answer of Richard Donner, who he said should direct a JSA film.
And his Superman movie was just so classic, and the JSA team is made up of characters that are also so classic. To me, that's also a perfect fit. I really like that answer.
Jonathan Hazelton gets honorable mention saying that Christopher Nolan should direct a standalone Lex Luthor film in the same vein as Joaquin Phoenix's Joker film.
I don't know, Christopher Nolan may be sort of beyond those kind of character studies. He kind of directs blockbusters now, right? So maybe if he wanted to do a smaller indie film again, he could absolutely do Lex Luthor. Nick Abanto also chose Christopher Nolan, but said that he should direct The Sentry.
Yeah, The Sentry would definitely be one of those blockbuster films. He's a super powerful character and has the unique gimmick of that dark alter ego, the Void. I think there's a lot that you can do psychologically with that character that would be kind of reminiscent of Inception level stuff. It would just be awesome.
And our final honorable mention goes to Sir Patrick Hindsight, who said that Josh Trank should direct Fantastic Four, which he has already done, but Sir Patrick Hindsight wants to see his original vision fully realized. But the winners of this week's No Prize are Neil Poling and John Kellman for their answers of Tim Burton directing Ghost Rider and Taika Waititi directing Detective Chimp, respectively.
Yeah, Ghost Rider has had a few films that have come out so far, but none have really captured the spirit of the comics in the way that I think they should. He's such a gothic but fun character. I think Tim Burton would be fantastic. Because if you look at a character like the Headless Horseman from his Sleepy Hollow movie and just how like brutal and exacting that character was, you would know that his version of Ghost Rider would just be perfect.
If they ever announced Tim Burton directing a rated R Ghost Rider film, my brain would just explode and I would end up probably looking like Ghost Rider. And as far as Taika Waititi directing Detective Chimp, like that came out of left field for me. That was a huge surprise. And once I heard it, I just loved it. Taika Waititi is such a wacky kind of director. He would kind of be perfect for a Detective Chimp film, I think.
And since Taika Waititi is friends with Jermaine Clement from The Flight of the Conchords, I think Jermaine would provide an amazing voice for Detective Chimp.
Oh, absolutely. For sure.
Great answers. Great answers, everybody. But specific congratulations to Neil Poling and John Kellman. You guys win this week's No Prize. If you, the listener, want to win your own No Prize, go ahead and stay tuned to later on this episode when we ask another question of the week. Now that that's done,
on to the news.
All right, for this week's news, we have a lot of updated release dates to go over, but what's unique about this first one that we're going to talk about, Venom, is that this movie has revealed its official full title. The Venom sequel is going to be called Venom: Let There Be Carnage, which is not a great title in my opinion.
No? You don't like it?
I don't really like it. It's too long. They could have just called it Venom 2 or Venom Carnage or something like that. I think there's like a tendency nowadays with these films to have too long of titles. Like Birds of Prey is a great example of that with the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn. And I feel like this Venom movie is going down that same route.
I don't think it's nearly as bad. I don't think it's bad at all, really. I mean, it's a tie-in to Cletus Cassidy's line at the end of the first film.
That's not what Cletus said, though. He didn't say, let there be carnage. He said, when I get out of here, there's going to be carnage.
Oh, that's right. Wouldn't something like Maximum Carnage have been better?
Or Absolute Carnage. I would have accepted that as well. It's certainly less words, and I think it's much more marketable since, they've already had those story arcs in the comics. That being said, as a film, I am excited for it. I'm really excited to see how the Carnage versus Venom fight is going to be different from the Riot versus Venom fight. Now, the movie, which was originally supposed to come out this October, has been pushed back to June 25th, 2021. So it's a summer release now, which is a good sign for the amount of confidence that the studio has in the movie.
But that also means that we're only going to get one more Marvel film this year in Black Widow.
Well, two more if the New Mutants gets released. That movie is still up in the air. We haven't heard anything about it, which probably means that it's going to be on streaming.
Yeah, that never got a new release date, did it?
Not yet. But I'm really excited about Venom's new release date. I'm really excited about the movie itself. I'm only so-so on the new title. But that brings us to our question of the week.
Come up with a better title for the upcoming Venom sequel. Not really a question, but I'm sure it'll be fun. Post your answer to our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or email us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com. We'll pick our favorite answer and draw that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to social media.
In other release date news, we've learned that the Doctor Strange sequel, which was originally supposed to come out in springtime of 2021 and then got pushed to November of 2021, has now been pushed yet again to March 25th, 2022. So it's coming out almost a year later than what it was originally supposed to be. It appears that the film ultimately was pushed because they wanted to make room for the upcoming Spider-Man sequel, which took Multiverse of Madness' date of November 5th, 2021.
And that was nice of Disney to do that for Sony.
Yeah, a little too nice, if you ask me. I would have been like, no, you take the March date. Doctor Strange was always supposed to come out before the next Spider-Man film. So I don't know how that interferes maybe with the overall narrative of the MCU, but if Spider-Man is kind of like leapfrogging like that, they probably don't tie into each other too much.
And they have plenty of time to figure it out.
Right.
I'm not too worried about continuity.
What's interesting is that the new March date for Doctor Strange is very, very close to the Thor: Love and Thunder release date. Now, that movie was originally supposed to come out in November 2021, and then it got pushed to February 18th, 2022, and has recently been moved up a week to February 11th because the studio is trying to capitalize on Valentine's Day with its release date.
And that makes sense. It sounds like it's going to have some kind of romantic angle, so perfect Valentine's Day movie.
Yeah, but to have those two films so close together is pretty exciting. In fact, Black Panther comes out in May of that year, so we're going to have 3 MCU films come out within 4 months of each other in
Holy
2022.
Crap. That's incredible.
Yeah, I don't think that's ever happened before in the history of these films. So really looking forward to spring of 2022, even though it seems like it's an eternity away from right now. 2020 is just dragging its ass.
For sure.
Yeah, it can't go by fast enough.
The Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse sequel also got pushed back.
Right. Yeah, that movie was originally going to come out on April 8th, 2022. It got pushed to October 7th. And I absolutely loved the first Spider-Verse film. However long they need to take to make sure that the sequel is as good as the original, I'm all for.
Around that same time, a year prior in 2021, is when The Batman is finally going to be released. October 1st, 2021. Now, originally, it was going to be released on June 25th, making it a summer film, but it got pushed back to the fall. Now, early October is sort of the same time frame that Joker came out, and, that movie went on to become the highest grossing rated R film of all time. So I think Warner Brothers wants to capitalize on that same time frame.
Yeah, and I remember someone involved in production made a tweet saying that the new October release date was much more fitting to the film, which leads people to even further speculate that the movie is indeed based on the Long Halloween story arc from the comics. Are you excited to go see the Long Halloween on Halloween, Jonathan?
Oh, by the time Halloween comes around, I'm sure I'll have seen the film like 10 times. So yes, I will be excited to see it for the 10th time on Halloween. The Flash movie that was originally supposed to come out on July 1st of 2022 will now be released a month early on June 2nd. Now, there's current speculation that they may recast the lead role and not go with Ezra Miller, considering the controversy that happened with him in Iceland.
Yeah, he choked somebody. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was not a good look at all. So who knows what'll happen with that film. The film I'm looking forward to even more than that, though, would be the Shazam sequel. Now, if you remember, that was originally supposed to be released on April 1st, 2022, just a few months after the Black Adam film. But now, the Shazam sequel will be released on November 4th, 2022, just 6 weeks before the Aquaman sequel is scheduled to come out on December 16th.
Yeah, 2022 is just going to be nuts in terms of superhero films. I hope people don't freak out about that. But it's a shame that we're not going to get the Shazam sequel so close to the Black Adam release like we were going to previously.
No, I actually was really looking forward to that because I really love those characters and I wanted to see how well they played off of each other. But it'll still be less than a year after Black Adam, so it's not too far away still. Black Adam, of course, is still scheduled to come out on December 22nd, 2021. It's a Christmas film, as the first Shazam probably should have been.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all the updates on the upcoming release dates for these Marvel and DC films, and that does it for all the news for this episode. Let's go ahead and move on to the main event of this episode, where we find out who would win in a fight between Ra's al Ghul and the Red Skull. Okay, in a matchup that pits one of Batman's greatest villains against Captain America's greatest villains, we have Ra's al Ghul the Demon's Head versus the Red Skull. Both of these guys are extremely evil, hell-bent on cleansing the world of their enemies, or just people in general, and they're both prone to resurrection. These guys have both died multiple times, but for some reason, they always keep coming back up.
Yeah, it's kind of Ra's al Ghul's shtick to come back.
And they're both in charge of their respective sinister organizations. We think this is a fantastic matchup to do on the back of our Batman Begins review in our previous episode where Ra's al Ghul was the primary villain.
And I'm looking forward to this match. I mean, Ra's al Ghul is probably my most favorite Batman villain.
If you've never listened to our show before, the way Jonathan and I determine a winner between these two characters is by running simulations on them using their statistics. Now, we take their statistics and put them in what's called a Monte Carlo simulation, which plots their stats among a normal distribution, which is a bell curve. This randomization accounts for all the variables that take place during battle and provides us with a percentage of wins for each character.
Right, because we run the simulations 1,000 times. And we collect the stats from the official Marvel Power Grid, which we use to extrapolate DC's stats, and we incorporate a few more to make a more robust simulation.
Yeah, it's a very scientific, objective method that was used by the television show Deadliest Warrior on Spike TV. So we don't consider feats, we don't assume that a character's greatest feats account for that character's abilities all the time. We also know that each character also has their feats on the low end. We don't consider fan votes. This isn't a popularity contest.
It's just all stats all the time.
Right, and before we run these statistical simulations, Jonathan and I like to break down the histories and abilities of each character, as well as speculating an improvised scenario in which we imagine how one of the 1,000 fights that we run actually play out beat for beat. So let's go ahead and get into it. Jonathan, and I think you go first this episode with the backstory of Ra's al Ghul.
Okay, so roughly 600 or 700 years ago, a man whose real name has been lost in time was born to a tribe of Chinese nomads. The tribe settled in the North African desert, neighboring a prosperous city ruled by a sultan. Interested in the sciences from an early age, the young man abandoned his tribe and pursued an education within the city, eventually becoming a renowned physician and a husband to a beautiful woman named Sora. In his research, the physician discovered a secret and mysterious pool of healing water, known as a Lazarus Pit. And when the Sultan's son became fatally ill, the physician, against his better judgment, submerged the prince entirely in the healing waters. The prince emerged, fully healed, in a state of irrational rage and insanity. In his psychotic state, the prince strangled the physician's wife Sora to death, a woman the prince had jealously wanted to marry for himself. Unwilling to charge his son with murder or bring shame to his lineage, the Sultan blamed Sora's death on the physician and ordered him to be locked in a cage with his wife's corpse forever. The physician was eventually rescued by a young man named Hue, whose mother was previously treated by the physician, and together, the two ventured into the desert to find the physician's old nomadic tribe. They eventually found the tribe being led by the physician's uncle, whom the physician convinced to help him overthrow the Sultan's city. With an understanding of the germ theory of disease centuries ahead of its time, the physician was able to infect the prince with a deadly virus through some contaminated fabrics. When the Sultan approached the physician once again, begging him to save his son the prince, the physician killed both the Sultan and his son, then led his tribe to raze the Sultan's city to the ground, killing all of its inhabitants and desecrating every altar of every god. An act that earned him the title he would be known as for the rest of his life, Ra's al Ghul, which translates from Arabic as the demon's head. Ra's spent the next several centuries traveling the world, building an empire known as the Demon, and discovering new Lazarus pits that he used to prolong his life. He remained hidden from society, eliminating all traces of his past with the help of the military and assassination branch of the Demon Empire, the League of Assassins, sometimes also referred to as the Demon's Fang. Those who serve him are loyal unto death, including his primary servant and formidable bodyguard, Ubu, a title held by several men from the same bloodline across the centuries. As the modern industrial era emerged, Ra's began to view mankind as a scourge on the planet, destroying its natural beauty, and he developed into an eco-terrorist intent on human depopulation through genocide to restore balance to the Earth. During the 17th century, Ra's came across a small island in the middle of the Indian Ocean that contained a Lazarus pit at its core. Ra's used his assassin army to conquer the island, enslave its inhabitants, and turn it into his utopian headquarters, which he named Infinity Island. For centuries, the world believed the island was uninhabited and unimportant, eventually leading to billionaire Bruce Wayne to purchase the island without knowing who dwelled on it. Initially intent on destroying Bruce Wayne and acquiring his business empire, Ra's instead over time discovered Bruce Wayne's secret identity as the Batman, who you can learn more about in our Batman vs. Moon Knight episode, and a possible heir to his demon empire. Ra's had a daughter named Talia from his late wife Melisande, as you may remember from our Daughters of the Demon vs. Daughters of the Dragon episode. Ra's had groomed Talia to one day rule his empire, and wanted for her a husband with good genetics, of respectable means, and mind. Ra's used Talia to learn more about Batman by orchestrating her kidnapping in Gotham City by his then appointed leader of the League of Assassins, a man named Dr. Ebenezer Dark, who was becoming disloyal to Ra's. Batman proved formidable in taking down the League of Assassins, though in the final confrontation between Dr. Dark and Batman, Talia shot and killed Dr. Dark before he could kill Batman, as she had fallen in love with the Dark Knight. Wanting to test Batman personally, Ross surprised Batman in his Batcave, asking him to once again save his daughter Talia from a kidnapper, the same person who happened to kidnap Robin, who was, unbeknownst to Batman at the time, Ross himself. Ross witnessed Batman's detective skills firsthand, leading him to refer to him as Detective out of respect. Batman eventually deduced Ross's test, and Ross revealed his intentions to find a worthy successor to marry his daughter and reign over his empire. Batman did not answer Ross's proposal initially, though over time, Batman refused his offer, wanting instead to bring Ross to justice. Batman tracked Ross across the globe, sometimes defeating Ross, forcing him to use his Lazarus Pit to recover, and other times, Ross proving the victor, with Talia being the only thing between Batman and certain death, and Ross disappearing into the shadows. At one point, Ross was nearly successful in wiping out most of humanity by engineering a deadly virus known as Ebola Gulf A that the League of Assassins first unleashed in Gotham City. Faced with an enemy he couldn't intimidate or imprison, Batman traveled to other outbreak epicenters around the world, eventually tracking down Ross and identifying him as the mastermind. Ross was able to elude capture, however, as Batman finished discovering a cure for the virus and prevented Ross's global cleansing. Where's Batman when you need him, am I right?
Right? I know. He needs to take care of this Rona.
Furious with Batman, Ross used Talia to hack Batman's Batcave computer and steal his contingency plans for defeating each member of the Justice League should one of them go rogue. Ross orchestrated the plan successfully, dispatching each of the Justice League members while also activating a frequency-emitting machine that scrambled worldwide communication, and preparing to unleash a deadly nerve agent to spark a nuclear war. To top it off, Ross also kidnapped the bodies of Batman's dead parents and threatened to revive them in a Lazarus Pit as insane, zombified versions of themselves.
Whoa.
With Batman's help, the Justice League members were able to recuperate and stop Ross's plans, though Batman was kicked off the team and Talia, now disillusioned with her father, abandoned him and his empire. After Ross failed to destroy the relationship between Batman and Nightwing as punishment for the ruined relationship between him and his daughter Talia, Ross's first daughter, Nyssa, whom Ross thought was dead, emerged on the scene to torture and manipulate Talia and kill her father, which she was successful in doing, much to Ross's pride. To ensure Ross stayed dead, Batman oversaw his cremation. Talia and Nyssa became leaders of the Demon Empire, and Talia created a genetically perfect son using her and Batman's DNA, named Damian. Unbeknownst to everyone, Ross had a son of his own named Dusan, an albino whom Ross deemed unworthy in life and hid. Dusan tried to use Damian as a host for Ross's soul, which had survived through a magic ritual, and Ross had been transferring his essence from person to person in a weakened form until he could enter a host body of his own bloodline. Ross's plan to possess Damian was unsuccessful, however, and Dusan eventually offered himself as Ross's new host body, which Ross accepted. In the New 52, Ross's goal isn't genocide, but to rid the world of evil, more like his character in Batman Begins. He recently discovered and bathed in the Well of Sins, which was the original and purest Lazarus Pit. This granted him mystical powers such as true immortality, telekinesis, and the manipulation of a green mystic energy he could use to conjure weapons, emit green electricity, and levitate.
What?
Don't worry though, he lost those abilities after a battle with Jason Todd, who you can learn more about in our Red Hood vs. Punisher episode.
Oh, thank God, I thought I was fucked for a second.
Like the very best Batman villains, Ross is a dark mirror reflection of Batman himself. Of Batman's adversaries, Ross has proven to be the equal, if not superior, in regards to martial arts, scientific knowledge, deductive reasoning, and strategic thinking, in addition to vast wealth and access to resources. His centuries-long existence has allowed him to master most weaponry, though he prefers various types of swords and small blades, simple explosives, and stealth aids such as smoke pellets. The Lazarus Pits he occasionally bathes in have imbued him with enhanced strength, endurance, and healing, with the risk of gradual insanity if he overuses them, which he's careful not to. And though he's not a sorcerer, He does have proficiency with mysticism, having mastered the craft of transferring his soul into others through mere touch. That's Ra's al Ghul.
Now, is the soul transfer, is that a magic thing?
He used to have to do like this full-blown ritual, but over time that became condensed into all he had to do was touch someone.
Interesting. What's the source of the Lazarus pits?
They're natural, actually. There is no source. Or at least that source has not been revealed yet.
Oh. Well, that's pretty interesting. I find it particularly fascinating that one of his superpowers is vast wealth and resources, because that's primarily the Red Skull's main superpower.
I wish I had that superpower.
I know, right? That would be amazing. But let me go ahead and get into the backstory of Marvel's very first supervillain, the Red Skull.
Oh, it was the very first one. Interesting.
Yeah, chronologically in publication history.
Oh, okay.
Now, Red Skull Johann Schmidt was born in Germany to Hermann and Martha Schmidt. Johann's mother died giving birth to him, and his father, blaming the baby for killing his wife, immediately tried to drown the newborn in a drunken rage.
Jeez.
Johann was saved by the delivering doctor, though, and his father, in his grief, committed suicide the following day. The doctor took the baby Johann to a local orphanage where he suffered abuse throughout his early childhood, instilling in him early on the belief that mankind was his hated enemy. He ran away from the orphanage at age 7 and lived on the streets, ending up in prison frequently for theft and vagrancy. As a teen, Johann got a job sweeping for a Jewish shopkeeper. He fell in love with the keeper's daughter, who at that point was the only person to have ever shown him kindness. One day, he tried to force himself on her, and she resisted him, leading Johann to commit his first murder in an act of rage.
Oh no.
Exhilarated and empowered by the release of his pent-up anger, Johann decided to commit his life to causing as much misery to people as possible. In the 1930s, during the Nazi Party's rise to power in Germany, Johann worked as a bellhop at a hotel where Adolf Hitler was staying. Johann admired Hitler and saw him as a mentor to serve, and Hitler saw in him a terrible anger that could be festered and used. Seeking to manipulate Johann into a symbol of fear, Hitler gifted him a blood-red death's head mask and labeled him the Red Skull. He became Hitler's right-hand man and second in command of the Nazi military. Johann constructed secret bases all over the world and equipped them with secret experimental weapons technology such as mind control devices and force field generators. His personal favorite was a horrific chemical weapon called the Dust of Death, which was a poison gas that would shrivel the skin of the victim's face while also turning it red. Johann led armies to attack and loot cities and towns all over Europe, in some cases executing entire populations. Johann also completed numerous subversive missions leading up to World War II, largely provoking and attacking the United States. It was his actions that led to America's creation of Captain America, a symbol of hope and freedom to counter the Red Skull. You can learn more about him in our Commander Steel vs. Captain America episode. The two fought on nearly every front of World War II, becoming arch-nemeses. Johann's plans were often thwarted by other heroes of the war, including the Submariner, the android Human Torch, and Nick Fury and his Howling Commandos. Near the end of the war, when the Nazis' defeat was all but certain, Johann worked with Baron Zemo to lay a final trap for Captain America, which you can learn more about in our Lex Luthor vs. Baron Zemo episode. Before falling into the trap, Captain America attacked Red Skull in one of his hidden bunkers in Berlin, right as Allied forces began bombing the city. One of the bombs caused the bunker to collapse. While Captain America was able to escape, Johann was trapped under the debris. The cave-in released an experimental regenerative gas from canisters within the bunker that put him into suspended animation. He was assumed dead for decades before being found by Hydra, a terrorist organization led by his former associate, Baron von Strucker. One of Hydra's subsidiaries, called Advanced Idea Mechanics, or AIM, had created an all-powerful, reality-altering device known as a cosmic cube, which you can learn more about in our Dr. Manhattan vs. Molecule Man episode. Johann stole the cube and used it to get his revenge on Captain America, toying with him and taunting him until Captain America managed to take advantage of Johann's overconfidence with a surprise attack that knocked the cube off of a cliff to be lost at the bottom of the sea. Johann would regain the cube several times to try and manipulate and defeat Cap, including granting Sam Wilson powers, which you can learn more about in our Dr. Midnight vs. Falcon episode. Eventually, Johann managed to get AIM and SHIELD scientists to recreate the cube, but it was an imperfect one. Its only use was to imprison a clone of Hitler known as the Hate Monger. Eventually, Johann discovered the effects of the experimental gas that placed him into suspended animation were wearing off, and his body began aging into his chronologically older self. He secretly drugged Captain America with a chemical that would cause him to age as well. The two fought in their elder forms, though Johann succumbed to a heart attack. He died in Cap's arms, and Cap was cured to normal. But Johann's old World War II ally Arnim Zola, who was a scientist who had managed to preserve his own mind in a robotic body, also managed to preserve Johann's mind and placed it into a cloned body of Captain America that was created using samples of Cap's DNA. Johann was back, and now his enemy's physical equal. Johann decided to work more behind the scenes now, ditching his mask and gaining a foothold in US politics. He managed to use his influence to get Steve Rogers to cede his role as Captain America and be replaced by John Walker, known as US Agent, who was a patriot that Johann could manipulate. He got Cap and US Agent to fight and tried to use his dust of death on the winner, Steve. However, US Agent knocked him back and the dust backfired into Johann's own face, turning it into a red skull, just like the mask he always wore.
Oh, finally!
His exposure to the chemical over the years ensured he survived the effects, but his face would never be the same. Johann later requested Captain America's help to defeat Hitler's consciousness inside the imperfect cosmic cube, with the ultimate goal being to trap Captain America in the cube itself. Hitler was defeated, but Cap smashed the cube, thwarting Johann's plans. Johann would later manage to piece the cube back together, but was assassinated by the Winter Soldier, aka Bucky Barnes, Cap's sidekick from World War II, whom you can learn more about in our Drake vs. Winter Soldier episode. Just before dying, Johann managed to use the cube's limited power to transfer his mind into the Winter Soldier's handler, Alexander Lukin. Predicting the outcome of the superhero civil war between Captain America and Iron Man, Johann orchestrated Cap's defeat in a seeming assassination that actually trapped Cap in space-time so that Johann could transfer his mind from Alexander Lukin into Steve Rogers. This of course backfired due to the efforts of Sharon Carter and the Winter Soldier, who helped bring Steve back. Sharon killed Johann, but he eventually returned as a clone created by Arnim Zola. Upon Johann's return, he decided to target his hatred toward and wage war against mutants. He recovered the brain of the then-deceased Professor X and used it to grant himself Charles' psychic abilities, broadcasting hatred to everyone across the globe. This caused Magneto to beat Johann to near death, unleashing the psychic entity known as Onslaught, a villain that once nearly destroyed the Earth that you can learn more about in our Titans vs. X-Men episode. Now known as Red Onslaught, Johann was eventually defeated by a morality inversion spell cast by Doctor Doom, Scarlet Witch, and Doctor Strange. Beast then performed a brain procedure to strip Red Skull of his psychic powers.
Wow.
The Red Skull currently has no superhuman powers to speak of. If he did, it would be his vast access to resources such as weapons, wealth, and information. But even without that access, he is a formidable hand-to-hand combatant, nearly on par with Captain America. He occasionally carries on his person a variety of handheld weaponry, such as firearms, explosives, and knives. He always has his trademark weapon on hand, known as his Dust of Death, that he can fire from a gun or stash away in a secret compartment. His greatest asset is his brilliant mind, often coming up with elaborate multi-phase plans with contingencies each step of the way, especially contingencies to avoid his own death. Though he's wielded a cosmic cube at several points in his history, he won't be wielding one for this match. And that's the Red Skull.
You're darn right he won't.
I mean, he could.
No, he couldn't.
Maybe he has one stashed away secretly.
I doubt it.
Okay.
So Arnim Zola didn't reclone him into a Steve Rogers clone that second time?
No, it turns out that Arnim Zola had like a spare Johann Schmidt clone that he could transfer his mind into.
Oh, convenient.
Yeah. And that's kind of a way for Red Skull to always come back from the dead, is through Arnim Zola's mind transference abilities. So that does it for the histories of both Red Skull and Ra's al Ghul. What Jonathan and I like to do now is improvise a speculative scenario in which we imagine how a fight between these two characters would play out beat for beat. It actually has no bearing on the final results, which are determined through the simulations we run, but it's just something that we think is fun to do.
Right, we don't set any rules for this match other than the fact that the heroes don't know anything about each other, other than the fact that they need to take the other person down, and they start about 50 yards away from each other in a non-environment location, or a location that plays no bearing on the match itself, since we don't take stats for the environment, and the characters have to win on their own merits.
Right, yeah. Some characters can excel in certain environments over others, and since we don't want to take that into consideration, I just imagine that it takes place on some neutral battlefield.
So I think that's everything. The characters start 50 yards apart. Who goes first?
All right, I'm going to say that Red Skull goes first because although they're both brilliant minds, I think the Red Skull is just so much more filled with hate that he's going to want to get in this first shot.
Okay, yeah, I can buy that.
So what he does is he reaches into his jacket pocket and he pulls out a freaking handgun and he just brat, brat, starts firing off right at Ra's al Ghul, laughing like a crazy maniac.
Okay, so right away, Ra's al Ghul starts running in this like zigzag maneuver, like a ninja, all right? And he's just like dodging these bullets. And as he gets closer to Red Skull, as he's moving, he takes out like this thin, long metal dart that he just hurls at the Red Skull's gun, clogging it. So when the Red Skull shoots again, the gun explodes in his hand.
Oh, jeez. So it explodes in his hand, and Red Skull's like, Scheisse!
And by this time, Ra's al Ghul has like bridged the gap between them. So he's already lunging at the Red Skull with his badass scimitar.
Red Skull sidesteps Ra's al Ghul's scimitar strike, twists his wrist, and punches him right in the throat.
Except that Ra's al Ghul is way too much of a martial arts badass to let him get away with that. So as he tries to strike his throat, that's when Ra's al Ghul grabs his wrist, does like a wrist lock on the Red Skull and just like breaks his hand, and then sweeps the Red Skull's legs out from under him. So with Red Skull on the ground, Ra's al Ghul strikes down with his scimitar.
Well, Red Skull rolls out of the way real quickly. I think he quickly realizes just how big of a threat he's dealing with here. He kind of leaps to his feet as Ra's al Ghul is pursuing him with his sword swipes, and from a secret compartment in his jacket sleeve, he unleashes the dust of death, spraying it right into Ra's al Ghul's face.
Ah, crap. Okay. So like Ra's al Ghul instantly feels like the effects of the gas, and so he knows to like put some distance between him and Red Skull. So that's what he does. He like does some back handsprings backwards.
While he's asphyxiating, yeah, okay.
But some of his associates have been known to carry vials of Lazarus Pit pool water. And so I'm going to say that he has one of those too. And so, he just pours it onto his head, and that kind of stops the progression of the dust's effects.
Oh, so it's kind of like a healing factor in a bottle.
Yes.
All right, so Ra's al Ghul is fully healed. He's kind of probably still like choking and wiping his eyes from the dust of death, recovering from it. But he finally opens his eyes and sees a grenade at his feet that's about to explode. One of those, like German stick grenades,
Okay, but Ra's al Ghul has been around for a really long time, and he knows exactly how these type of grenades work. I'm pretty sure like the fuse runs all the way down the stick. So right away, he takes his scimitar and slices through the grenade right at the base of where the stick meets the explosive, and that just severs the fuse, preventing it from causing the explosion.
Is his sword that sharp?
Heck yeah, it is, dude. You have no idea.
All right, okay. Well, Red Skull is like really disappointed that this grenade didn't go off.
Yeah, he is.
So with his grenade severed and Ross still somewhat reeling from the dust's effects, Red Skull charges at him with a big-ass knife in hand.
Well, my friend, you're bringing a knife to a bola fight, because two of those go flying right at Red Skull as he's coming towards Ra's al Ghul, pinning his arms to his side and wrapping his legs together so that he trips and falls on the ground.
Okay, well, Red Skull manages to reach down and use the knife that he's holding to sever the bola that's wrapped around his legs.
But as he's busy doing that, that's when a smoke pellet drops right near him, engulfing all around him in this gray haze that he can't see through.
Okay, but while he's trapped in this smoke, he's going to be trying to wiggle his way out of the bola that's around his upper body.
And that's when Ross comes in, swinging his scimitar again into the smoke cloud.
Well, I mean, Ross can't see through the smoke either, so Red Skull probably gets slashed up a few times by the scimitar sword.
Yeah, he
does.
But
he also positions himself so that Ross severs the bola cord that's wrapped around his body, freeing up his arms.
Okay, but if he's going to cut into the cord, he's also going to cut like into his torso. Red Skull is like bleeding now.
That's fine, because Red Skull reaches into his jacket and pulls out his other handgun, a German pistol, and starts shooting wildly in the direction of the scimitar swipes, and manages to pop Ra's al Ghul in one of his kneecaps.
Jeez.
Ra's al Ghul falls to the ground in pain, and by this time, the smoke is kind of dissipated, so the Red Skull is able to take better aim, and he shoots Ra's al Ghul's scimitar out of his hand, and it goes flying away. And then aims for his head, and gives some speech taunting Ra's al Ghul so that he knows for certain that Red Skull is the victor here.
Okay, but Ra's al Ghul is like a literal ninja, so he has like lightning fast reflexes. So before the Red Skull could get perfect aim on Ra's al Ghul's head, Ra's al Ghul has already unsheathed this like small like ninjato blade and just like swipes at the gun, severing it in half.
Dang, he has sharp weapons.
Yeah, he does. And then in one like fluid motion, he spins around and then plunges the blade in Red Skull's torso, impaling him.
Well, I mean, that's an impressive maneuver to do with a blown out kneecap.
He just pivoted on his other leg.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure he could fight with one leg. But we know that the Red Skull has a broken wrist. He can also fight at close quarters with one hand, even though he's, bleeding out from being stabbed. But he's going to kill Ra's al Ghul before he bleeds out. But with Red Skull's remaining good hand, he drops the sliced gun, grabs Ra's al Ghul, pulls him in close, and unleashes from a secret compartment a highly concentrated dose of the Dust of Death that kills its victims much more quickly. It just shrivels not only Ra's al Ghul's head, but his entire body, and he can escape due to the fast-acting nature of this particular heavy dose. So Ra's al Ghul dies before Red Skull can bleed out.
Well, little did you know that as Ra's al Ghul died, when Red Skull was holding onto him, he transferred his soul into the Red Skull. Okay, so yeah, Ra's al Ghul.
The Red Skull is dying anyway.
Yeah, but Ra's al Ghul hastens the process by grabbing his scimitar and just like plunging it into himself, committing like seppuku.
So he kills himself.
He kills the Red Skull. His soul will live on.
But his soul is in the Red Skull now.
The League of Assassins will resurrect him. Don't even worry about it.
Well, Red Skull will come back in a cloned body, so don't you worry about it either.
Ugh.
All right, let's go ahead and call it there. We'll leave the match at somewhat of a draw and find out who the true winner is by running their statistics through 1,000 simulations. We'll be right back, guys. All right, that match got pretty gritty and evil there at the end, but we would expect no less from these two masters of mayhem.
Yeah, that speculation was a little bit trickier than I thought it would be. The two guys are pretty evenly matched.
Yeah, going down the stat list, they both have similar physicals in terms of speed, strength. Ra's al Ghul is absolutely a better fighter. He's just definitely a better fighter. Red Skull's no slouch, but Ra's definitely has, the centuries of training to back up his superior fighting skills.
That said, Red Skull does have superior firepower. He does tend to use more modern weaponry, whereas Ra's al Ghul's weapons tend to be a little bit more archaic.
Yeah, you would think that he would switch it up to, like, guns and stuff,
Yeah. He's just not used to them.
Yeah.
That also gave the edge to Red Skull in terms of range, again, since he uses guns.
And the Red Skull often wears some kind of body armor. However, we know that Ra's al Ghul has a limited healing factor that also provides him some protection, so we figured those balanced each other out in terms of overall durability. Since Ra's al Ghul is a ninja and has like smoke pellets and stuff like that to help him evade attack, we gave him the edge in terms of evasiveness.
Yeah, he's just a little bit more stealthy than Red Skull.
And the biggest discrepancy between Jonathan and I, the one we argued about for a solid 10 minutes, is which character is smarter. Now, I'm saying that the Red Skull is one of the most brilliant strategic minds in the Marvel Universe. Jonathan is saying that Ra's al Ghul is that for DC, but also has centuries of experience. I'm saying if you look at their accomplishments, they're about the same.
So in the end, we kind of decided that they're both on an even keel when it came to strategic intelligence.
Yeah.
So whatever. It's bullshit, but whatever.
So fairly comparable here, these two characters. It was a good matchup. Let's go ahead and see who won. Now, when it comes to Instagram, a whopping 80% of you guys thought that Ra's al Ghul would come out on top. I think a lot of you people are selling Red Skull short.
No. Ra's al Ghul is just a badass, and everyone knows it.
But I think, personally, that Red Skull has this one beat because he's bringing a gun to a sword fight. Not to mention, the really deadly Dust of Death.
Well, my friend, your guess is correct.
Yes!
Unfortunately. Dig it. Dumb. Red Skull beat Ra's al Ghul 528 times out of the 1,000 matches.
Oh.
Ra's al Ghul won 47.2% of the time.
Oh, that's so close.
It is close.
Really close.
It's really close.
Maybe next time Ra's al Ghul will learn how to carry a fucking gun.
Seriously, if he just did that, he would have won.
I mean, he has explosives and stuff that he can throw, but the Red Skull also has throwable explosives like grenades.
More powerful ones.
Yeah. So yeah, Marvel's on a freaking streak right here.
I can't remember the last time I won a fucking duel.
You never will. You're just never going to ever again.
Dumb.
But DC fans, if you're upset by this, don't worry, because officially Jonathan and I are now dead even on the number of wins for all the duels that we've done in this podcast. So if you want to listen to another episode where DC wins, you have an exactly 50-50 shot if you go back to one of our previous duels.
Well, I'm sad, and I'm going to go listen to all those other episodes to cheer me up. It'll be great.
Well, you do that, and listeners, you can do that as well. That does it for this episode, but you can listen to previous episodes by visiting our website, dynamicduel.com,
where you can find links to all of our social media accounts, including on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. If you want to reach out to us, you could also email us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com.
You can also find a link to our online merchandise store where we sell cool-ass t-shirts and mugs and pillows and anything your heart desires with Jonathan's no prize artwork on it. You can take a look at all of Jonathan's no prize artwork on our Instagram. Who are you drawing this week, Jonathan?
Red Skull. I already know I'm going to give him like a big swastika on his chest, so everyone hates it.
Jesus Christ. Well, that does it for this episode, guys. In our next episode, it'll be another duel episode, actually. We're going to find out who's going to win in a fight between Robin, Damian Wayne, and Patriot, who is a member of the Young Avengers and is kind of taking up the legacy of Bucky. So that'll be an exciting matchup that will lead into the following week when we review the animated DC film Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, in which Robin plays a big role. So join us for that in the upcoming weeks. In the meantime, please don't forget to subscribe to the show, rate us, review us if you can, and share us with your friends and family. And don't forget to stay tuned at the end of this episode for a special sneak peek of the bloopers episode that we made this month exclusively for our patrons.
A special shout out and thanks to our executive producers, John Spees, Bodo Winter, and Jace Crump. That does it for this episode. We'll talk to you guys next week. Up, up, and away.
True believers.
So we're definitely going to be talking about Robert Pattinson potentially.
Right, if you're listening to this episode, months down the line, all the news we're talking about is old news, so just go ahead and skip ahead to Man-Thing versus Swamp Thing.
Yeah, sometimes we get YouTube comments that's like 10 minutes in, still haven't got to the duel. It's like, listen to the podcast, you dipshit. No, I don't want to say the YouTube thing. Okay, yeah.
But last week's question was a psychological test, kind of.
A test for what?
A test for psychology, obviously. All right. Magneto carried him all the way to, the Muir Woods or something, I'm assuming.
I was actually at the Muir Woods recently and the Golden Gate Bridge.
Who cares?
I like turtles.
Please include that. Please include that in the
What an asshole. What an asshole. So in other news, tossed salad? Ew.
Yep.
Dr. Alec Holland. So Dr.
Did you drink any water?
Yeah, I did. It burned. What the fuck happened? I spilled. Jeez. That needs to go on the blooper. That was a great scream.
It's burning. Water's too hot.
It's hot. Yeah.
Listen to the full thing by joining us at patreon.com/dynamicduel.